to interview Eloy Rodriguez. He's a colleague of mine that I've worked with for the last 18 months. And he's someone who's impressed me with his work ethic and what he does as a strength coach. And so I thought today would be a good opportunity to get Eloy here and explain what he does and principles that he follows. And it's just a bit of an excuse for me to sort of pick his brain and see what he likes to do. Eloy has a good way about working as a strength coach. He's very methodical. He's very almost, I'd like to say, like surgical, the way he works. I always look over and he's always lining someone up with his eyes and seeing if they're on the leg curl or whatever in the right way. And I think it's got a testament to him. He's got a sort of eye for detail with the way he works. He works with rugby players, MMA fighters, and also works with highly stressed corporates and individuals. Is there anything I've sort of missed with your bio? Or?
No, that's pretty pretty good description. I'm pretty anally retentive about detail and planning and organisation. So it's just that attention to detail with everything.
Yeah, and then so who do you predominantly work with at the moment?
So at the minute it's predominantly high stress individuals on a one-to-one basis. I've got one pro MMA fighter, two international level, gold medaling Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes as well, and doing sports nutrition for a professional female weightlifter and sports nutrition for an international female powerlifter as well.
Yeah.
And a GB British weightlifter too.
Okay, cool. And when going back to that attention to detail, where do you think you got that from? Because I mean, obviously, you know, there's trainers out there, there's coaches who have their sort of specialties, but I mean, I'm not saying that that's your specialty, but just from an outsider's point of view, it seems like you're very focused on the details and the nitty gritty stuff. Did you have that as a kid? Were you?
Yeah, from a very young age, I was like infatuated with the military. So I was in the cadet force. So as soon as I was old enough, I joined the army as soon as I was 17 and a half. So I've always had a high fascination with the military, and in the military it's instilled to you little things like attention to detail. So I think from that young exposure, I became very meticulous with looking at small things and how things are done. And I think I just carried forward to my career, wherever way I went.
Yeah. Okay. And so what sort of engaged you and drew you into, obviously you mentioned your military background, but what would you say drew you into the health and fitness and coaching side of things for yourself?
Well, I've always enjoyed teaching people. That's from a young age, I've always enjoyed teaching people. Like when I was in cadets, my favorite thing to do was to teach the younger cadets. I used to love teaching. Yeah. And then when I moved into the territorial army, again, teaching was the one thing I really enjoyed. So I got a distinction from the Skillet Arms School, which is one of the hardest grades to get in the military. Yeah. So I just really enjoyed teaching. Yeah. I then moved into the corporate world. I very quickly rose to coaching people, which was then different to military style teaching, where I actually learned how to coach.
When you say corporate world, what?
So I used to work for Imperial Tobacco, where I used to be a sales rep.
It's a bit of a contrast.
Yeah, I've hit both ends of this. I used to sell cigarettes to shop owners and then educate shop owners how to promote and sell our brands. Yeah. So
So now you're trying to stop people from smoking.
Yeah. Now I've gone to the opposite end of the spectrum, trying to make them more healthy. So that's what got me into the whole coaching side of things, because coaching is very different to teaching and instructing. And when you learn how to coach, it's a totally different chess game.
Yeah. And what would you say the major differences, or for you anyway, the way you'd classify it for yourself as a coach versus someone who's going to go in and teach?
So for me, on a classic point of view, a teacher will tell you what to do. Yeah. A coach will... the coach knows what you need to do, but will be able to make you come up with that decision yourself. So the difference between coaching and teaching is coaching will give the person ownership for their development, their progression. Yeah. Whereas teaching is just tell someone what to do. And also on a bit more of a basic level, coaching then is a bit more in tune with how to get people to do things. Yeah. So for example, teaching would be, okay, just squat. Yeah. Just sit down and stand up. Yeah. Whereas if you're coaching someone, you maybe give a lot more verbal cues and you have like a wide range of tools to try and get them to understand. So things like break at the knee, break at the hip, push your knees out, screw your feet out, using all sorts of different techniques to try and get them to do what you need them to do effectively.
Okay. And so from there, you obviously you worked in the corporate, and then from there, what was your next step?
So I then got massively out of shape. So when I was in the army, I was very, very fit.
Yeah.
And then because I got so focused on the corporate world, I then got massively out of shape.
Yeah.
So I went from being able to run a 5-minute mile to like getting puffed walking up the stairs sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I actually then started doing CrossFit.
Okay.
And then from CrossFit, I got myself back in shape, and I then naturally started helping teach CrossFit classes.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was like, actually, this is pretty good fun.
Yeah.
I can then sort of marry up my coaching skills with health and fitness, something which I've always been sort of into from when I was young.
Yeah.
And then I then ended up moving to being a CrossFit coach.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay. And where does the food passion fit into it? Because I often hear you with clients in the background, you're talking about some latest restaurant or some recipe that you've got. Where does that fit into? Does that fit under the smoking, then the eating, and then
that comes onto the childhood. So Spanish dad, Filipino mum, like food is a massive part of our culture. Like everything we do as a family revolves around food. Like celebrate something, we go out for a meal.
Okay.
Like get a good grade, go out. Everything was always revolving around food.
I've always wondered where the love for food or the...
Oh, I was a very fat kid. So when I was 12, I had a 44-inch waist.
Okay. Shit. I
was a blimp.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad you didn't actually pick up the smoking as well. So
No, I used to be.
Oh, you really?
Yeah, when I was in the army, I used to smoke. I used to have a peak of 60 a day.
Okay.
I did smoke 60 a day for 1 month. So yeah, when I tell people about quitting smoking, so I've been there, done that. I did patches, did gum, tried to do cold turkey, and the one thing which worked for me, which is what I tell everyone, is just reading a book. Yeah. Alan Carr's Easy Way to Quit Smoking. Just
okay. And that worked for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it works for everyone that I've recommended it to.
Yeah. So you've had clients that have. Yeah. Okay.
And in that book, it's like a really cool book. There's a point. Everyone has this point where you read it and you go, "Oh, if I read one more page, I'm gonna quit smoking. Yeah. If I stop now, I'm still gonna smoke." So people either break through that page, or they put the book down and forget about it for a few more months.
I haven't even heard of that. It's a good tip. I'll have to look that one up.
It's like if you read any like, for example, Anthony Robbins type stuff, any of those sort of self-help books, you read them, you understand it, then there's a point you go, "Oh, I'm either gonna do or I'm not gonna do." And but with Overeaters is a smoking book where you're just like, okay, I'm either gonna keep reading where I know it's gonna go down, or you're like, nah, I'm not ready for it to go down yet. Yeah.
And then where did you go from? So you were the CrossFit coach, and then after that you...
from CrossFit coach, I then inevitably started working with more injured CrossFitters. Yeah. From the PICP stuff I was doing, just helping rebalance people, identifying weak links. Yeah. So just continued educating myself, and ended up moving to Dubai, where I was working out of a strength and conditioning center attached to a medical center. Okay. Which is where things like my professional development really sort of shot through the roof. Yeah.
And so just touching on that, where did you sort of start the education process? Obviously you need to get certified as a CrossFit coach, but then the steps that you took to sort of get to where you are in terms of your knowledge and your reading and all that sort of, in terms of your practice. Obviously you need a bit of a hunger and a passion to do it, but what sort of stoked the fire, and then what were the first couple of steps?
So that first couple of steps, I remember the first course I did was reps, which is the basic personal training qualification. Mm-hmm. And I remember going, God, I really don't, this is going to be really tough. Yeah. Did the reps 2 and 3, then did my CrossFit level 1, CrossFit powerlifting cert. This was all in the space of like 3 months, if I remember correctly. Yeah. I then did PICP 1 and 2. And actually funny, so when I did the PICP 1 and 2, I didn't realise there was 2 components. I didn't realise there was a practice.
Usually 1 and 2 means 2.
No, I knew there was 1 and 2, so I booked and did the online component. I didn't realise to get the actual qualification, you had to do the practical element. So I was like, oh wait, crap, I need to get the practical. So I then ended up flying like last minute to Rhode Island to do the practical element 1 and 2, and then flew back. Yeah. So then did my PICP 1 and 2. This is like in the space for like 5 months now, I think. Then from there I started studying for my West Side Barbell Strength Cert, which is
Louis Simmons.
Louis Simmons' cert, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Did you get to meet Louis Simmons or
no? No. I did it all online, which is an option, and yeah, I think it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really tough because you get a huge stack of books and DVDs you have to go through. And probably like some of the books are just like translated Russian text, black and white, ring binder style. You just oh my God.
Tough.
Yeah, real gouge your eyes out, tough to understand and read. But yeah, then the test, it's an open book test, which should be like ringing alarm bells. Why is it an open book test? Yeah. And I remember like, I literally by then I was like, you know what, if I fail, I'm not doing this again. This is the hardest 3 hours of my life. My brain was done. But I then did that. And I think like initially I had a very competitive nature when I was younger. Like typical type A personality, very competitive, wanted to be the best at everything I did. Yeah. So that's why I went fast in the corporate world, because I was always trying to be better than everyone else. And the same when I entered CrossFit, I was like, right, I want to be better than all the coaches. Like, right, no one's doing any of this stuff, right? I'm going to push on harder to be ahead of the game. Yeah. So that natural competitiveness is what initially drove my education needs. Okay. And then from there, actually just turned to actually, hold on a minute, I started like really enjoying seeing people that weren't able to get results. They'd like seen physios or they'd seen doctors, and they weren't able to get better, or they'd worked with loads of different coaches and they hadn't got better. And I said, oh, if I look at things differently, suddenly you can then help people that have been really frustrated. Yeah.
So it sort of reinforced your learning, because seeing value in, okay, I did this course and now I can apply this. And I think James has spoken to me before about you in terms of you go to a course, you learn it, and then you apply it straight away. Yeah. And I think for any coach or for anyone in any industry is, when you learn something, you want to apply it straight away, because that's going to cement your learning. And obviously that's for you, is how you've acquired knowledge and you've kept knowledge as well.
It's a huge thing. Like when you, as you say, when you do a course, I think this is something a lot of people do make a mistake. They just try and integrate one or two things in. Well, right now, when you come back from a course, you should live that course. Yeah. Like just practice just that course till you've fully understood the aspects you've been taught, and then you go, okay, you then integrate it into your system. Yeah. So you have like a good, well-rounded approach or understanding of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. What sort of, to flip it round, to perhaps give advice to a trainer or to someone who's looking to maybe take their next step with their education in terms of health and fitness, where would you start? And I guess take the coach's approach, but also take someone who might not have the means necessary to pay for a coach like yourself. Where would you point them in the direction to start first?
That's a great question.
Just think of the coach first, and then.
That's a deep question, eh? I don't know. Like, so that brings up my sort of, personal beliefs about how the education systems worldwide are. Everyone's just regurgitating the same stuff with a different spin. Yeah. Inevitably, if you do a little bit of research, get a little bit of old books, you can pretty much find every single training system or every single nutrition system there. Yeah. So it's quite hard to say what would I recommend for a coach.
But just say you had a coach and he was eager. Yeah. You saw he had the same sort of passion and desire as you, but this is Eloy 10 years ago, and you said here's say the top one course or top two courses. Here's 2 books. Here's just your first 6 months. This is what you need to do.
Honestly, then I would just recommend the West Side Barbell Special Strength Cert. Yeah. Because that's going to tick off, if someone truly is hungry. Yeah. That task of reading all of those books and hitting all of those DVDs, it's like, it literally is. It's like a gumption. It's baptism of fire. Yeah. It's like if you can get through that, and then you can be pretty certain that anything else going forward is going to be pretty easy. Yeah. That's a really good one. But then you get to inevitably, for me, PICP 1 and 2, I still use those principles today for majority of my clients. So even in some parts of my athletes, I still use a lot of the stuff I learned from PICP 1 and 2. I still use some of the assessments I learned from there. Yeah. So that's a really good starting approach for anyone wanting to take their training to a next level.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of, if you were, say, a client or someone who wanted to get strong and they wanted to get fit, and they, like I said, they didn't have the means necessary to hire a coach, where where would be a good starting point? Obviously, the West Side Barbell might be a bit too advanced for just an everyday person, but yeah, what?
Ooh. God, there's so many. There's such a mirage of, well, like an online coach or like online options or.
Oh, not necessarily online, but like just a resource. This is like a basic starting point for someone in terms of nutrition, because obviously, when it comes to health and fitness, you've got, you know, the physical activity, you've got the mindsets, you've got the nutrition, and then you've got integrating it into lifestyle. So for books, when I see clients, it depends what area that they're lacking in. Sometimes I'll recommend a book based on lifestyle or that. But I guess for you, is there any like go-to resources that you'd give perhaps a client or?
No, because it goes back to my coaching style.
Yeah.
When I do my my sessions with people, I don't tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Okay.
Like unless they literally come in and begin to say, what do you want from me? What do you want from this session? You know, what do they want to know?
Yeah.
Like if they go, I want to be a specific food plan, told what to do. Okay, that's pretty easy then.
Yeah.
But inevitably with most people, it's more of a coaching approach.
Yeah.
I've never really found I get so much success by telling people what to do.
No.
And plus as well, like how everything works differently for some people. Like for me to get lean, like I have to go on a pasta diet.
Yeah.
Like that will get me lean. If I go on like a healthy diet with like rice, potatoes, vegetables, proteins, I get fat. Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So for everyone is slightly different. So I think it's quite hard to have like generic resources.
Yeah.
So they're like books which I always recommend for clients to like read if they have the time. Like The One Thing is one thing I love for people to read. Yeah. And Mindset as well can help a lot of people.
Yeah. And to encompass your, we can get into the weeds a little bit later, but for your nutritional sort of philosophy and standpoint, is there any like book or I know you've picked a lot of things from different people, so it's hard for you to say that, but yeah, if you had to say to someone, this would be a good resource for you in terms of nutrition.
I would actually probably then pick Precision Nutrition.
Okay.
Yeah, their website is a great source of information, and you know their coaching system is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very good source of information actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of, I've heard you say before, always going after the weakest link, whether it's, you know, the nutrition components, whether it's their strength, weakness in their body. And I know you've got a fairly detailed assessment criteria that you make people do, but what, if you had to generalize a bit and just put your generalization sort of hat on, for corporates, where do you see the biggest bang for buck in terms of working from like a physical standpoint? And then I guess for the athletes that you've got, for your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, for your rugby player, what would be some of the weak areas that you find that people really need to sort of pull their finger out and work on?
So yeah, I think you got the two main ones, which becomes no surprise, is like squat mechanics. People's ability to move their lower body correctly, whether it's ankle, knees or hips. But inevitably most of the high stress individuals we see sit down way too much. And as a result of that, their bodies don't know how to move, which across time starts to create problems when they're sort of 40, 50, 60 years old. And they're like, oh, I don't understand where this came from. It's like, well, it's years and years of abuse. So helping people fix those movement mechanics in the high stress individuals, for me, is that weakest link. So the weakest thing for them is movement, being able to move in a healthy, correct fashion. And what would you say, like you said, obviously squat patterns would be one, but is there a specific muscle group that you'd say are underutilized? Is there common tightnesses, just to generalize, just so people can get like something tangible that they can take and say, okay, well, you know, obviously it's hard to generalize because, you know, unless you see the individual, but as a blanket rule, what would you say? As a good rule of thumb, like most people tend to have very tight hip flexors. So people's hip flexors, which are at the front of the body, are just way too tight. Which, when that's tight, will then deactivate people's hamstrings and glutes. People tend to have very weak hamstring and glutes, especially hamstring and flexion. So people really struggle to do hamstring and knee flexion, which is a very annoying one to come on, which actually most people tend to link to a tight rec fem. So their rec fem's too tight, which is inhibiting their hamstrings from working. So those are definitely like tight rec fem, tight hip flexor with weak hamstrings and weak glutes is definitely like, if you can almost guarantee it with most people.
And so what would your, say I walked in and I had a tight anterior part of my body through here, my glutes weren't working, I had a saggy ass and that wasn't working as well. What would you say to me? Like pretend I'm the client, would you say, get on the rower, do 2,000 meters? What should I do to improve?
So as like anyone who's trained with me knows, my answer to 90% of solutions is a split squat. If you can do a split squat correctly, which is your knee shooting forward, hamstring fully closes your calf, back leg stays straight, that's a pretty good indicator your joints are moving pretty healthily. So most people genuinely struggle to achieve that. Even my combat athletes that are flexible, they struggled with it initially. So
would you, for example, if you had someone who just had no idea and they had really poor mechanics, where would you regress them from that, or would you just get them to do that with a dowel rod, or what would your...
So inevitably most people, like no matter how weak they are, I think I've only had a handful of times where people couldn't do a split squat if you just work down the regressions. So the best regression is just to elevate that front foot. And you just keep elevating the front foot until they can do it. Until they can do it. And then almost using like a pull check type system. Do one set, and then decrease the height. And across time, you increase the range of motion without increasing. So instead of focusing on increasing the intensity or increasing the volume, you focus on increasing the range of motion, which is another like really nice system you can do for yourself.
And anything else? Obviously, split squat is your go-to number one that you'd use for someone that couldn't do that, or that had weak glutes and tight through the anterior aspect of your hip. Is there anything else in terms of your other go-to ones that you'd pull out of the toolbox?
And then from there, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because it's more dependent on, like, some people will struggle with movements, but inevitably doing some form of leg curl is always going to help, because when you do a leg curl correctly, you'll learn how to control your hip. So most people, when they leg curl, you'll see their butt shoot up in the air, you'll see their lower back muscles activate. So actually learning how to just contract your hamstrings and glutes without bucking your hip is a good one for people.
That's what you're looking for when you got your surgeon's hat on. You're trying to watch if their hips are coming up.
Exactly, make sure the hips aren't moving, they're not going left and right, they're not going forwards and backwards. Making sure they just stay still and it's just the knee closing.
And in terms of upper body, so lower body, you said anterior tight through the hips, weak through the glutes and hamstrings. What would be a common one that you'd see for upper body as well?
Upper body is always overactive upper traps and a tight chest. Because driving, we're like this, laptop, we're like this. And it's, I think people generally now, from a postural point of view, tend not to walk around with their chest puffed out, shoulders back, because it's coming across as quite an aggressive posture. But that's the way the human body was designed to be. So especially in females, it's very prevalent where they really sag their shoulders in, just because they don't want to have that masculine posture, but that's the healthy position for the body. So you always see that.
And in terms of athletes, what would you see the main differences between an athlete and general pop? Do they present with any different problems, or are they still to sitting down and spending too much time in front of the laptop or the computer or whatever?
The problem I see with athletes is, especially in the pop, since the 90s, the way people have been taught to move, for example, knee not shooting past the toes, for example. I was actually just having this conversation earlier with one of my jiu-jitsu athletes. They're just not taught how to move correctly, and that's been 20, 30 years worth of back knowledge that's meant since they were a child or since they started training, they weren't moving correctly. So they inevitably have a lot of the same problems as people who sit down a lot, but they're just a little bit more higher up the progression chain. So I can get away with doing a little bit more advanced things because their risk of injury is somewhat lower.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then from a nutritional standpoint, what would you say are the weak links that you see with your corporate guys, and then I guess we can follow it up with your athletes as well?
It's the same. Corporate and athletes both have exactly the same problem.
Yeah.
They don't eat enough vegetables.
Yeah.
No one eats enough vegetables.
No.
Like period.
Yeah.
Like my ideal rule of thumb is you should have a 1-to-1 meat to vegetable ratio.
Okay.
So for every 100 grams of meat, you should have 100 grams of fibrous vegetables, green vegetables.
And then would you recommend percentages of raw versus cooked, or are you not phased with that? Or
I'm not so phased with that. Like, you know, literature does show you are better off having it raw because you don't degrade the enzymes found in natural fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
I know for myself that if I have raw vegetables, I don't do so well digestively.
Yeah.
Some people do better. I think it comes down to people's personal preferences, but also the current state of their digestive system, what's going to suit them best.
Yeah, yeah. And anything else? I've heard you talk a lot before on people not eating enough. Would you say that is an issue with the corporates you see, or is it they're just eating the wrong foods? Or
I think it's a tough one because it depends. So yes, most people I think undereat or they eat the wrong choices.
Yeah.
And then coupled with their lifestyle and stress, it's quite a tough one. But most inevitably, the end problem is when people start to eat healthy, is they then massively undereat.
Yeah.
Because they've gone from eating calorie-dense foods to non-calorie-dense foods, which is why most people, when they start to eat clean, lose weight.
Yeah.
They've just dropped their calories down. But the mistake people do is they eat clean and try and reduce portion size, protein size, and just try and eat loads of green vegetables. So their calorific intake is nothing. Yeah. Which will give them good results maybe first time or first month, 2 months, but inevitably the damage they're causing their body in the long run is a nightmare.
Now, from a macronutrient standpoint, how would you assess the needs of someone? And I've heard you talk a lot about carbs and trying to increase people's carbs to increase certain metabolic processes in the body. But I guess, you know, for today, we need to generalize a bit. But what, I guess, would your philosophy be in someone comes to you and says, Eloy, I want to drop 5% body fat, I want to be healthy. What would your go-to thing, and how would you assess the macronutrient splits that you'd possibly recommend, or you do it, I guess, just your approach? Yeah,
so I work on like minimum values.
Yeah.
So for me, every male, but it's an average male, so 80 odd kilos.
Yeah.
And you can then sort of shift up and down from there. But for me, an average male should be having approximately 70 to 80 grams of fats a day, and then at least 80 grams of carbohydrates a day.
Yeah.
That's like baseline minimum, non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And then you then work the protein out from there based on their goal. And then you then see what calories you're at, and you can then work up or down from there.
Yeah.
So females, for me, is then 60 grams of carbohydrates and about 60 to 70 grams of fat as a minimum.
Okay. It's your baseline.
Baseline, but that's like non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Unless you're going for something like really extreme, like someone trying to really drop down fast, then things start to change.
Yeah.
But inevitably, like a good rule of thumb for most people is if they come in through the door, need to lose weight, if you put your average male on an 1800 calorie diet of clean foods and a female on approximately sort of 1500, 1400, that's a good gauge for you as a coach, or to work out your baseline.
Yeah.
And then you can then play with things.
Yeah.
Only ever really going up from there, never down.
Yeah. Okay. And then from like skin folds, I've heard you talk about before. Is there, what information do you draw? I know obviously we've both done education in biosig, and you know we agree and disagree with some sort of parts and elements of that. the teaching, and I think it's hard to correlate a lot of the science that he used, or Charles Poliquin used with that. But what, I guess, philosophies from that, and do you draw any information from skin folds and say your umbilical's 32 millimeters, we don't do this, or do you not do that anymore?
I look at the skin folds slightly different. So this is something I picked up from Christian Maurice.
Yeah.
I don't look at them as individual sites anymore. I look at them as ratios.
Okay.
So I look at the ratio between quad to hamstring, the ratio between quad, hamstring, and tricep, ratio between like tricep and pec, ratio between subscap and supra, for example, subscap, supra, and umbil. That's what I look at, more the ratios and how the ratios change across time, because I can't, like, okay, there are some which you can see a direct correlation. For example, when someone hasn't slept, I always see their calf go up.
Yeah.
It's that one, I do a calf pinch. If it's gone up, I go to, oh, you haven't been sleeping very well. 100% of the time, oh my God, how did you know that?
Yeah. Well, you not 90% of the time you ask the corporate clients we've got that don't sleep anyway.
Yeah, true, yeah. They don't know what sleep is.
I'm a clairvoyant.
And yeah, so, but then, for example, like supra, which, people say is linked to carbohydrate intake.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen that go up when people don't eat enough carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So that can go up if people have too much and too little.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for it to be generic. And then people say umbil can be related to stress. Well, there's so many types of stress that it can be. So it's very hard to say one site is related to something, but looking how the shifts happen across the whole body can give you a good idea of where maybe something's gone a little bit off key.
Yeah. Well, I was just interested to get your thoughts on it, because I mean everyone's a little bit different with their take on the whole biosig system and the bioprint. What I've heard you as well talk about, and maybe you can just elaborate on it, is when you pinch some people, you can feel different types of fat and what potentially that could mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know yourself, like when you pinch so many people, your fingertips develop a touch, a feel, and I think that's the hardest thing. Which is why I don't discredit the pinches formulas, but I've seen quite a few different formulas floating around, and inevitably it's just a mathematical formula based on a law of averages. So you can't really say that pinches are accurate, but when you're developing pinches, or when you feel pinches, you've got the way the skin and fat feels tells you a lot about the state of the body as well, which is why I like pinches as a system, because you can tell a lot about what someone's been eating, drinking, or their lifestyle, just how they feel.
Yeah.
So, for example, for me, I've always found with healthier people, as in someone who can drop fat very, very quickly, their fat is very soft and malleable like Play-Doh, and it pulls away from the muscle and myofascia very easy.
Yeah.
When people are inflamed, or when someone is going to struggle to lose fat, their fat is very hard to grab, and separating it from the myofascia is very tricky.
Yeah.
So that's always like a big indicator for me. Like then throughout from one extreme of where you have to use like a ninja death grip to try and grab something, which is one extreme. Then the other extreme is where it's just soft and it just comes off.
Yeah.
Like across that medium, you've then got a variety across the board, and then where you feel that person's fat is then tells me a bit about potentially what I'll need to work on with them, and also to help them set realistic goals. Because if someone's hard and inflamed and their fat's horrible to grab and you can't grab anything and their skin's not elastic,
and you say to them your fat is horrible to grab.
I say to them your fat's hard, it's inflamed, you can't grab it, your skin is not elastic, your body is not healthy, it should be soft like Play-Doh, it should be malleable. Inevitably, until your body fat softens up and your skin becomes healthier, we can't expect results. And also, if the fat is hard like that, my pinches are now obsolete because I'm not sure what I'm grabbing. So inevitably what tends to happen with people is their fat starts to soften up. As it softens up, you can suddenly grab a lot more.
And you've found that with clients, because I've had several over the years that have had pretty stubborn spots, but I never really felt, I don't know whether it was I wasn't doing the right things, but I never felt like sometimes like it was softening, but have you had that experience where the fat actually softened itself up?
Yeah, I've had that happen, especially here in Dubai. I've had it happen like quite a lot, especially with females. So I've had like one female jump 3% as per the caliper formula in 1 week, and it's like, well, your tape measure's smaller, your photos show you're leaner, you know, your weight's gone down. Are you actually 3% fatter? Is it mathematically possible that someone put on 3% body fat when they're visually leaner, tape measure's smaller, and their weight's gone down? It was just a literal case of your fat has softened up. And she commented, she goes, I don't like it. I went, why? Because my legs are jiggling now. And I went, well, that's a good thing. You didn't come in with weightlifter quads and powerlifter hamstrings. That was just really stubborn fat. Now it's softened up. It's your body's healthier, so now it can start to get rid of it. So I've seen it happen like a fair few times, and it's always setting the expectations of the client. Like, listen, it's gonna happen. Be ready, because it is gonna happen, but it's a good thing.
And is there, just touching back on the nutrition side of things as well, obviously it's all related, but have you found, is there certain philosophies and styles that annoy you when you see people or coaches preach a certain way about doing a certain style of eating, whether it's, you know, a low carb eating that you disagree with, or is there something that you sort of roll your eyes at and think, I can't believe they're doing this?
The only,
or mistakes.
The only pet peeve I have, and it's just more of a coaching aspect, is when people talk to clients about macronutrients, breakdown of protein, carbs, fat across every single meal, weighing out food portions. It's just like, okay, these are normal people. It's going straight in one ear, it's going out the other. They have no idea what you're talking about. And they're literally going to be like, okay. And as soon as they're out, they're like, I was meant to have a salad, I'm just going to go get a salad. So it leads to like a double frustration, because that person inevitably is like, I'm wasting 15 minutes of my paid time for information I don't understand. And the coach then gets frustrated. It's like, oh my God, they're not doing what I want them to do. You have to be realistic with people's abilities. So majority of people that we see as high stress individuals in our workplace, they're not able to, it's very unrealistic for them. Most of them struggle to even follow food delivery. It's like, man, if you can't even follow food delivery, what are your chances of following an actual meal plan? So it's more a case of, you know, just educating people what healthier choices are. Even like my athletes, I'm constantly shouting at them like, just eat your vegetables. I just what's wrong with you?
I guess the best diet's the one that you can follow.
Absolutely. So and that's, you know, as a coach for general population, you should specialize or be specializing in how to help people come up with the diet that works for their lifestyle.
That's a good point. And now just touching on, we've obviously spoken about nutritional standpoint, but now the back end of that, so the stuff that you might have missed in terms of micronutrients, and obviously touching on now supplements. What's your approach with that? Is there specific tests? And I guess coming back to that question before, like, to be a generalized approach, what are the key areas that people are missing with the modern conventional diet?
So inevitably, the one thing that, you know, it is research backed, and it is an unarguable fact that fruit and vegetables that we eat today are not as nutrient dense as they used to be. So the equivalent of 5 fruit and veg in the 70s today is approximately 13 different portions of fruit and veg. That's a huge shift in nutritional balance.
No one's eating the 13.
We're
trying to get people to eat 13.
Well, you can imagine that's like 1.5 kilos of fruit and vegetables. That's a lot of vegetables. That is a lot of broccoli. So that's just a proven fact. And then the second fact is that all of the fruit and vegetables we're eating today are heavily treated. They're not like they were in the 70s, where it was seasonal, where these recommended daily RDAs were created. Because they're heavily treated, they're covered in more chemicals and pesticides, which our body has to detoxify, which increases our RDA for micronutrients. So it's an unarguable logic that inevitably the one thing we all need more of is nutrients.
Okay. And then in terms of what what common ones are we deficient in, or where do we need to start looking? What's a good starting point?
Oof.
I know it's a big question, but in terms of, I guess maybe relate it back to your clients and say you've got a new client. Where do you start with them from a supplemental point of view, and establishing what they potentially need?
So one thing that I tend to start with most people is some form of digestive support.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the just the biochemistry of the body, as soon as stress goes up in the brain, so even like a mind perceived stress, it changes the way your body works. And one thing that will automatically down-regulate is digestion.
Yeah.
So if your body isn't digesting correctly, the foods you eat are not going to be broken down correctly, and you're then going to get partial absorption of vitamins, especially within the B vitamin spectrum, which are it's acceptable to poor absorption if acidic environment, for example, isn't correct. So that's one which I use a lot with clientele. Is like my first protocol for most people is some form of digestive support, especially for people that struggle to eat.
Yeah.
So that's like people that struggle to eat the correct amount of foods, go to is digestive support. Like for example, I had literally one female, she's also a jiu-jitsu athlete. She came to me, she was going to the toilet once or twice a week for a number 2.
Yeah.
And she said, oh no, that's genetic. My whole family like this, I've had this for life. And I'm like,
your whole family's probably eating bad food.
Yeah, I'm like, just hold on 1 minute, here we go. So I just gave her some of my HCl pills and I said, here you go, just take 2 of these after every meal.
Yeah.
Next day, message me, I went to the toilet. Yay, thank you. And then she goes, next day again. And then that's it. Like, just off correcting her acidity, her bowel movements return to something of normal, like once, twice a day.
From that, you get buy-in because you've instantly got some sort of result, and she's gone from, doing a number 2 maybe once or twice a week to every day, as most of us would recommend is probably healthy. And so for digestion, you spoke about HCl. Is there any other ones? What do you think on your probiotics and that sort of stuff? When would you start to look into other things?
So I used to use probiotics a lot, and since moving to Dubai, I've stopped using them.
Okay.
Because, if you look at a lot of the stuff coming out now, is there are specific probiotic chains which can do certain things in the body. Yeah. For example, they've researched one probiotic strain which, when given to one group versus placebo group, the group taking the probiotic actually lost weight. Yeah. Whereas a placebo gained weight. Okay. And they didn't tell anyone to change anything in their lifestyles. So they're living the same lifestyles. Yeah. So they're saying, okay, there are some probiotics that can now make you more insulin reactive. It can make you lose weight. And they're now talking about probiotics to cure diseases, probiotics that cause diseases. There's so much going on in there. And if you then look at the history of probiotics, of how we naturally get probiotics in our body, so the way it naturally happens is, it's bacteria from the earth. So when you're playing in the dirt or farming, for example, you sweat, you wipe your hand, you have a drink, those bacteria get into your digestive system. Yeah. They're covered in the fruit and veg you eat. So every region will have a different set of probiotics based on their genetics as to what works for them. So, I only started looking at this because I myself had very bad digestive issues. And I then said, right, I'll try the probiotic thing. Did a probiotic protocol as recommended to me by a functional medicine doctor, and actually made my digestive system worse. Yeah. So I then looked into it a bit more. I was like, okay, there's way too much going on here for me to say, recommend to someone to take probiotics. So here, just take, most probiotics, you're lucky if they have 12 different strains. Yeah. There are millions and billions of strains of probiotics that live in there. I'm just going to flood your body with just 6. Yeah. I just find it, for me, it's just not something that I know enough about to comfortably recommend. So I just say, right, I'm just going to correct the acidity environment and let the rest sort itself out. Yeah. Well, I think that's powerful. If you, as a coach, you don't fully understand something, or you don't feel that it's in their best interest, or you don't know
it's lead by example. So if you're not going to take them yourself and you don't think it's going to work, well, why would you start selling them probiotics? So that's interesting. I didn't know that about probiotics. Is there any? So we can come back to supplements if you've got more stuff on that. But is there any natural things like that you'd recommend that people have in terms of foods, using foods to treat certain maybe not issues, but I know a lot of people recommend cinnamon for insulin sensitivity, turmeric for inflammation. What sort of foods would you use as like a supplement?
I honestly don't use foods for supplements.
No.
I just say just eat what you like to eat and try and get them to eat.
Yeah.
So for example, cinnamon helping with insulin, it's the extract sinulin, which is in there, which actually helps with insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
So that's where any study that has a positive correlation with cinnamon is from sinulin. Now, most cinnamon products don't have sinulin in them, it's just cinnamon. So you're not getting a huge bang for your buck. So it's actually quite hard to find a product with just sinulin in it. I think Blue Bonnet is one which I use out here for people.
Okay.
And so if you were to take it from just food, you'd have to use ridiculous amounts of cinnamon.
Yeah.
And it's the same with from turmeric, the extract from turmeric, which helps with inflammation, is curcumin.
Yeah.
1 teaspoon a day is farting against the wind. You're not getting a strong enough dose.
Okay.
And if you look at studies and stuff, you're talking about curcumin extract up to 2 grams a day.
Yeah. And you're not going to get anywhere near to that.
Yeah, that's 20-30 grams, if not more, of turmeric, assuming it's a good quality turmeric.
Yeah.
Too hard. that's a lot. It's a lot of turmeric. So no, I don't really have many. There's a lot of people talk about fermented vegetables and stuff like that as well, which is meant to help with probiotics.
Yeah.
It's not something that I play with. I just tell people to eat what they like to eat. If they naturally like it, they'll say, "Can I eat it?" I'm going, go to town.
Yeah.
So it's my whole coaching aspect. I don't tell people what to eat. They go, "Can I eat this?" And I say yes. 90% of the time I say yes. Try it, and we'll see what happens to you next week.
And what have you had someone who was maybe an aspiring bodybuilder or someone who was into the science side of things? Would you change that approach, or would you, in terms of being very specific, like saying you need to eat 200 grams of chicken, you need to eat?
Oh no, for sure. Yeah. If someone said to me, "Listen, I want to be told what to do. I'm competing for whether it's a show or I'm doing a photo shoot or preparing for a competition," I'm like, okay, you're not here to be mollycoddled. You're not here to be hugged and walked through life.
Yeah.
You're here to be given the fastest route to the goal. Just get on with it and do it. Yeah. So I have very little sympathy when it comes to people that step into that. For me, that's you stepping into the athlete world.
Yeah.
When you say, I've got a goal, I want to achieve it, don't care what I've got, I'll do whatever I need to do to it. Okay, you are now not allowed to complain. You are now in a world of pain and suck. Just suck it up and do as you're told.
Yeah. That's one thing I've noticed about you is you definitely adapt to the client who's on hand. I can literally see you pull someone across hot coals and laugh at them and poke fun and sort of push them in the right direction, because I think you know that they can take it and that's what they need. But then you also have other clients that need obviously that empathetic approach. You need that sort of caring and nurturing, and someone who can sort of, not make it too complex. How did you initially develop that, or just understand, okay, I'm going to ram this guy today, I'm going to, push him as hard as I possibly can? How do you sort of pick that?
That actually came, so that whole side of my working mentality started at Imperial Tobacco when I used to work in sales. So I used to visit 180 different shops a month. So inevitably in sales, people don't buy products, they buy people. So I started off with, every time I visited a shop, I then had a notebook where I then write everything that I talked about in that shop, what they like to talk about, wrote about their personalities. Then when I went back round, I referenced my notebook and I said, okay, talk about this, they like this, they don't like this.
Yeah.
So I inevitably learned how to adapt my personality across 8 to 10 different shopkeepers in one day. And it was like one of the key traits that when my coaches or my bosses came out and go, this is ridiculous. I've seen 8 to 10 different people in this one day. How have you done it? I went, we just write and remember. Yeah. And that skill stuck with me now as a coach, that I can then pre-identify that person, what sort of personality will suit them, and then how to then motivate them. So you say some people do need or prefer to have that, effectively the military type approach where they get shouted and verbally abused. Sometimes that's what they need, and sometimes they need that more nurturing side, and sometimes you know you're bouncing between the two, depends on their state. So reading their body language, their tone, how they are when they come in and go, oh, and then sometimes you're like, you know what, I've had enough of this. You then have to give them a kick up the ass, and sometimes you just have to do it.
I think that's such a big, important skill, but it's one of the ones that I guess you need to learn on the job. You can't just expect to know everything on the first day.
I think it's one of those things that develops with age as well.
Yeah.
I think, you know, a lot of the people that first come into the industry, they come in going, I know everything, and it's like, you can't beat school of life. Like, you can know all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to apply it onto someone, it's knowledge wasted.
Yeah. It's funny, I just had a note on here. Jeremy actually had a story of you at 24 Fitness training someone, and he said he's never seen anyone like destroy someone with tempo squats over like a 40 minute period. He said he watched you, and I can't remember if he said it was a guy or a girl, but he said the person, like, he's never seen a trainer like put someone through such a specific tempo and like just wouldn't let the person go through without actually like doing what you'd set them. And I think that sort of speaks to what you were just saying about then, and obviously that person was receptive, or maybe they didn't have the choice.
They didn't have a choice. It's a really good story from 24. So I had a regular client, and he brought his 2 mates along to a training session on a Saturday morning. Yeah. And I said, "You sure?" They goes, "Yeah, just come, just give us that, you know, one of our normal like sessions, like a energy system type session." And so it was, one of them had to push the prowler, the second one had to hold a parallel squat, and the third guy had to rest. Yeah. After the second round, one guy runs off to the bathroom to throw up. Yeah. And I'm like, he doesn't come back. After the third round, the second guy goes off to throw up. So it's just me and my client left. We were just laughing. The guy that ran off last, so the third guy who ran off, he came back and he goes, "You're not going to believe what happened." I went, "What?" The other guy, the guy who ran off first, went into the toilet, started throwing up. And while he was throwing up, he shit his pants. So he got pushed so hard that he threw up and shit himself at the same time. I'm like, well, that's the new benchmark when, you know, someone's giving it their all.
Well, you certainly obviously got the most out of that session. And I think if anyone has been to your strongman classes, I think they're fairly similar. Maybe not quite to that level of crap your pants, but
it was just, I'm mind bogged. He was just pushing the prowler and holding a squat. I'm like, I didn't really make it that hard.
Yeah, that is awesome. So would for an aspiring coach, I know obviously you've got to learn the lessons of life, but is there a book that you think you could learn a little bit of that, how to read someone in terms of knowing what to push and to get out?
So when it comes to coaching, one of the best books for coaching is by Robert Cialdini, called The Power of Influence, or The Power of Persuasion, Power of Influence.
Power of Influence. Yeah.
That's a great book. That's the book that I first read 10 years ago when I first started looking at coaching people. Yeah. And still to this day, that I haven't read a book that's more powerful of learning how to read people and learning how to motivate people to do things.
Yeah. So now, just talking about mistakes and what you've learned, I think as trainers, you know, we've all had the days where we think we know 100% what we're doing, and we've gone in and said something, whether it's, you know, said the wrong thing to the clients, or it hasn't worked out the way you've envisaged, but then potentially, obviously, you've learned something from that. And I think for me as a coach, the times that I've learned the most has been when I've got something completely wrong, or I've misread the situation. I've said maybe the wrong thing, or I've just maybe even given them the wrong exercise. But is there a story or a thing that comes to mind in terms of a mistake that you would have made that has, I guess, shaped you in terms of a coach and pushed you a little bit further?
Oh, that's a very good question, eh?
Well, we can come back to that one if you want time to think about it. So exercise assessment. So we're obviously evolving as coaches. There's things that I used to do 5 years ago that for an assessment that I sort of look at now and I'm like, well, why did I even do that? Like, it's just such a waste of time. But at the time, I thought I was doing the best thing. Is there assessments or things you used to worry about that you think, shit, this is not something that I worry about now?
Oh, so yeah, when I first started out, it was like all about 1RMs. I was like,
yeah.
What's your 1RM? Like, let's come in, let's test your 1RM. Like, people that I had were budding like CrossFit athletes, that straight up, right, let's do some 1RM testing. Let's look at your 1RM ratios. Yeah. And it's like, actually, no. Yeah, that's like egotistical coaching more than anything. Yeah.
And in terms of diet principles, like we're pushing a high protein diet. I think I was guilty of giving people way too much protein. I was having people eat like close to a kilo of meat a day, and then you kind of actually work out, hang on, this is not actually good for someone. But I think you only learn because you do it to yourself, and you're like, I'm actually not healthy.
My record was, I remember at one point in time I was doing 4.4 times body weight of protein a day, meat protein. I was doing like, at the time I would have been like 90 kilos. So I was doing like almost 400 grams of protein a day from meat. It's like best part of 2 kilos of red meat a day. And there was a time advocating hitting 3 times body weight of protein and just
for no reason.
That still is one thing I see a lot of people do. They just have too much protein.
It becomes an inefficient form of energy for people, because obviously the thermic effect of digestion, but then you've got couple that with lack of digestive enzymes. You don't have enough HCl, you're not assimilating it, and then you're just stressing your liver and everything to process it. And I guess that's connected to the next question is, what are common mistakes I guess general population people do, and trainers in our industry or coaches in the field of CrossFit or whatever that they do, that if you could wave your magic wand and say you're not going to do this anymore and this is what you will do?
I think that cutting out carbs. People are just cutting out carbs. So yourself from doing your ketosis experiment and getting into ketosis, going into that process of ketosis on low carb is not an easy task.
No, it's probably one of the hardest diets I've done.
And the amount of monitoring you were having to do with testing your ketones, the supplementation you were having to take. I took on board a lot of that from that, and had a couple of clients that say, I want to go into ketosis, and I said, well, I've done it myself, but having just seen Adam do it to the correct level of testing, because I love biofeedback markers, I'm like, I love the stuff he did. This is what you're going to have to do if you want to do this. Like the ketone strips, the supplementation, and they're like, nah, just too much. It's too much effort, too much money. I'm like, so.
I think a lot of people see, articles online, whether it's on TV or whatever, and it becomes glamorized, and they'll see a latest study about how it reduces, the risks of prostate cancer or whatever the latest study is. And I think pulling or cherry picking that information, then thinking, okay, I can just randomly apply this type of diet is it's definitely a mistake I think people and coaches make, and sort of use that gunshot approach of trying to fix people that way.
If you look at it from also another point of view, if you let's say you just jump into ketosis and you push your body into ketosis, you just look at the biochemistry of it. Where does your body store toxins? It stores toxins in fatty tissue. It's why a lot of things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are becoming so common, because your CNS and brain, fatty tissue. When your fat cells are saturated, it then goes onto those cells. Now, if you then go into ketosis, rapidly losing fat, you're just throwing a shitload of toxins into your bloodstream, which your body has to clear out. You're just asking for trouble. That's why when most people go into it, they feel like crap and they feel sick and they end up breaking. It's just not healthy.
And what would you say from, obviously that's nutritional point of view, but in terms of exercises you see people do horrible, if you went to your big box gym, I'm not going to name any names here, but if it was one of the big corporate gyms, what exercise and what things do you look at and go, like, this cannot be happening?
The squat's always a good one. You do see some really funny squats. I think my real pet peeve, my two pet peeves is chin-ups or pull-ups and dips. It's like when people just don't go into full extension and they're just like going halfway, or they're not able to do a chest to bar chin-up, and they're like, I can do 20 chin-ups. I'm like, well, let me see, and they're just doing this. I'm like, mate, what is that? What is that? You're not doing anything. Like, you're literally not doing anything. And it's like the same with dips. People just doing like a nodding pigeon head dip, just like moving their head up and down. It's like, no, your biceps got to cover your forearm, get full range of motion of your joints. I think especially chin-ups, that just gets because people like strut about, I can do loads of chin-ups. I'm like, let me see. It's like,
show me one.
You can't even do one proper one. Your first one, you're jumping up and you're then just using your stretch reflex constantly, just no.
Now, touching on mentors, and I know you mentor quite a few trainers, and you have done in the past, and you're still doing it now, but to put the shoe on the other foot, who has mentored you, and who would you say would be your biggest influence on your philosophy and your outlook on training? So just maybe start with the mentors that you've had.
So I've worked with, Andre Benoit was probably my biggest mentor, as far as helping me with professional development and guidance. But I think my most influential one, who's affected my career the most, would be Tom Crudgington. So he's from body development out of Bath in the UK. And I really liked his way of looking at the body as a movement side of things. So when I was learning under him, I was thrown out to a lot of things that I'd never really thought out before. I used to look at the body very linearly, very like squat, press, deadlift, very like typical strength coach. Whereas then he looked at it as more from a movement side, linking martial arts to strength and conditioning. And so he'd link martial arts, strength and conditioning with bodybuilding to create his own sort of fusion. And he was the first person to say, actually, if I was just to follow one system and one person only, that would be him. Because most people I see something, I really like this, I really like this, I really like this, I really like this. But he's the first person I've ever come across where actually I will 120% follow his system. Because it's just, for me, a very well-rounded and clever approach.
And he obviously gets the results. So and just speak about, like, in terms of mentoring, you mentor a couple of people from our work. What do you enjoy about that? Do you like that process? Is that something more you want to focus on in the future?
So that's my inevitable end goal. So my vision is, I just like to help people that are stuck. So people that are frustrated or haven't been able to achieve what they want to achieve, I want to help as many of those people as I can. Now, inevitably, what's the fastest way I can help the most people? That's by helping people be able to do what I do, or to look at things the way I do. So if I can see, for example, 20 clients in a year, I'm limited to 20 clients a year. And then people that stay on. So my overall impact is very low. But then if I can train one trainer, they can see 20 plus my 20. If I then have two, they see 20 plus 20, which is 60. And then so on and so on and so on. So that's my inevitable end goal, to be able to pass my system on to as many people as I can.
And just touching on that, so we've been through it before, but you've got a very in-depth analysis of the way people move. Where did you pick up a lot of that, and where did you get your sort of? I know you've taken a lot of resources from different people, but was that from Tom's assessment, or is that a different one?
Tom got me started. He started me having me look at it, and then a lot of stuff from David Leaf as well, Dr. David Leaf.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of really good stuff about how the body should move, how the body should walk, how joints should work. So a lot of the stuff I look at is also from him too.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. And then in terms of programming, so say you've got all the everything in a line and it's all working, nutrition's working well. If you, what are your sort of go-to programs around programming, and just keeping it sort of basic? It doesn't have to be too technical, but what theories, what methods do you like to use just for general pop? If someone's coming in and they want to get fit, they want to get strong, they want to lose weights, where do you usually start with them?
For me, like eccentrics. So playing with you got your concentric strength, your eccentric strength, and your isometric strength.
Yeah.
Most people's eccentric, concentric strength is too close together.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, like my initial big bang for my buck is doing a lot of eccentric work.
Yeah.
So making people move slower. But also, like it's a double win, because when you get them to move slower, they suddenly learn how to move correctly.
Yeah.
So
develop a positional awareness. They understand what it feels like to be in that.
And then on the third point, you're then creating like a good amount of muscle damage as well when you're making people move eccentrically very slow.
Yeah.
So you're then getting a bigger metabolic effect from the training session too. So it's like a triple win.
Yeah, yeah. And then go to exercises in. So you spoke about obviously squat, but is there you do all the basics, like your big squat, deadlift, press, chin, and you spoke about before split squat. Is there anything in terms of exercise that you obviously go for the weakest link, but are there normal ones that you'd love to use with people in terms of programming?
Yeah, my favorite of all tools is the prowler or the sled.
Yeah.
Like even favored over split squats, because I actually did it with one guy for 1 month. We just used the prowler. Like that was all he trained for a prowler for like 3 times a week. So prowler upper body, he'd push, pull with the prowler, and he'd use legs for the prowler, like quad and posterior chain. And after 1 month, he actually, according to his, at the time I wasn't doing caliper testing, but on his calipers from a biosig practitioner, his muscle went up and his fat went down.
Yeah.
Just off using a prowler for 1 month.
Yeah.
Like, he hated the prowler by the end. Like
probably not going to get much buy-in from him in terms of wanting to do more training, but it's definitely one of those exercises that you don't really need a lot of skill. You can just get them down there.
Yeah, you sit there, you pull it with a rope, you turn it around, you pull it with a rope. That's your biceps and back done. You can then do a shoulder press with it. You can do a chest press with it with straps. You can work your quads on it. You can work your glutes, hamstrings on it. So it's like kind of all you need, really.
Yeah.
And it builds severe like mental fortitude.
It certainly does, and it keeps you happy, I think, as well.
Yeah,
in a sadistic way. So now we've sort of come to the end of those bigger questions. I'm just going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. You don't necessarily have to answer them in a rapid fire way, but I've got quite a few questions here. So I'm just going to ask them. You can spend as long as you want on them. First one is, what's your all-time favourite training book, personally?
Super Training.
Super Training?
Super Training.
Yeah. By?
Mel Siff.
Mel Siff, that's it. Yeah. Okay. And self-help book would go to?
Or I just finished reading Anthony Robbins' Unleash the Giant Within.
Yeah.
And that accelerated past all of the books I've read before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have like quite a few, but no, that one just.
Yeah. It's an oldie but a goodie. I read that probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I think it was published in '91.
Yeah.
And the examples he's got in there, it's got like Ronald Reagan and all these.
He's got like it's a lot of talk about Donald Trump in there as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. So self-help. Any other? Do you read fiction? Or not really?
I used to, but it's been. I just finished reading one fiction book actually, just because I was on holiday. Heroes of the Frontier, which is quite a cool book. But I used to read a lot of fiction when I was younger, but past sort of 8 years, no, not really.
No, more into the development side of things. Okay, do you have any quotes, favourite quotes, or anything like a motto you'd live your life by?
He who says he can and he who says he can't is both right.
Okay. Who said that?
Henry Ford.
Okay. It's a good one. What do you do for fun? Sort of on the weekends, is there any hobbies or passions you've got?
I go dune bashing, so I take my 4x4 out in the desert and break her every weekend.
Yeah, awesome. I think I've seen some photos of that. Favourite cheat meal?
Pasta and cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a bag of pasta, about 300 grams of mixed cheese, half a block of butter, mix, and go.
Guaranteed to make you sick or lean or something.
9 times out of 10 after that meal, I wake up like 1.5 kilos lighter. Go figure.
If you could be known for one thing, what would it be?
Ooh.
It's a tough one. If I asked myself this question, I'm not actually sure when I was writing it. So,
dedication to clients.
Okay, that's good. We got an answer. What's in store for the next 12 months for you?
Really push the development of coaches side.
Yeah.
Just really start working with more and more coaches in whatever way or form I can.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good answer. What favourite movie?
Lord of the Rings.
It's a Lord of the Rings nerd.
I just finished rereading the 3 books actually as well. Massive Lord of the Rings nerd.
And because you're a strength coach and we work as a personal trainer, this is an obligatory question. What favourite action star?
Oh, between Jet Li and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. I was going to kick you out of it. Didn't say Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. Squats or deadlifts?
Squat.
Wine or beer?
Wine.
And this is the final question. If we could jump in a time machine and give yourself advice when you just started working as either a CrossFit coach, would you have any wisdom you'd say to yourself?
CrossFit is not the key.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that answer. So just rounding up, where can people, I'm going to put links below, but where can people contact you? Anything you want to promote, your training, your services, where can people find out more?
Yeah, easiest way to find me is on Instagram, which is strength_coach_Eloy, where we can go through I do a lot of Skype consults for nutrition, supplementation, lifestyle consultations, and or remote programming as well. Something that I do.
Yeah, and you work D5, as a coach, and that's pretty much it. If I've missed anything, you feel free to jump in. Are you?
No, I think
Awesome. Oh well, thank you, Eloy, for coming
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me.